Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this Blitz chess postmortem, a postmortem of my Blitz game number 455. I have the black pieces here, and my opponent kicked off with d4, and I played d5. So d4, d5, expecting some kind of quiet game. My opponent plays knight c3, which is usually introducing something called the Richter-Veresov attack after knight f6. That would continue bishop g5, and then I would play c5 typically, and this would be like a Queen's Gambit declined, if you imagine white playing the Queen's Gambit declined, and black as white playing the Queen's Gambit declined, and white as black playing the Chigorin defense, sort of like a Chigorin defense reversed. But that's not what my opponent had in mind. Instead, he played the move e4. And this transposes into the Blackmar-Diemer. Now, I was a bit confused at this point. The normal way to get to the Blackmar-Diemer Gambit is d4, d5, and then the immediate e4. And then here you have various options. If you don't want to play the Gambit, by the way, you can just play e6 and go to a French defense. Looks like even c6 is a move there. Oh, that would be transposing to the Caro-Kann. So that's how you get into a mainline opening. But there's nothing wrong with taking the pawn in the Blackmar-Diemer. And then the original Gambit that Blackmar played was the immediate f3. And the idea that Diemer introduced in the 20th century is this knight c3 first, followed by f3 to go after the pawn that way. Now, once again, there's various ideas of transposing to other openings with c6 or e6. But you can still keep it in Blackmar-Diemer Gambit lines by playing knight here. Then f3 is the main way of playing the Gambit, in spite of what the opening book says. And then I like to play the move bishop to f5 here as the way to deal with this. You can also take the pawn, but taking the pawn kind of gives white what he wants. You know, when you take the pawn, he takes back with the knight, and he has a fair amount of compensation for the pawn at that point. He's got good development. He has open lines for his bishop. And interesting. It's interesting Gambit play. So I like to play this move, bishop to f5, to keep a wrinkle in it. Let's back up. It's interesting that the opening book shows the move bishop to g5 here. I wanted to explore this a little bit because I don't normally see this. Normally people who are playing the Blackmar-Diemer immediately go f3 there. If you kick the bishop with h6, that's the top engine choice. Looks like the best idea is to trade and win the pawn back. And this looks like a pretty comfortable position. You could play f5 here, kick the knight back, and maybe bishop to d6. And looks like black has easy development. He's got doubled pawns here. If there's a check, you can block with the bishop back to e7. Still, it looks like white has given up the bishop pair. So it looks like in the long run, this doubled pawn is not going to be too much trouble, and the bishop pair will be an advantage. So I think this is fine for black. Okay, I just wanted to point that out. So let's go back to the game. In the game, the way it was played, he went, in this position, he went with knight to c3 instead of the d4. I played knight to f6, which is the main move, and now he plays e4. And so we've transposed, cancel that. After e4, we have transposed into the Blackmar-Diemer Gambit. And so I go ahead and take it. Once again, I could play e6 and transpose into a classical French. But there's nothing wrong with taking this. And after f3, I play the move bishop to f5. Like I said, this is maybe the second choice here. The most principled way to play, I suppose, is to take the pawn. But as I mentioned, that's kind of giving the Gambit player what he wants. So this is an interesting alternative. And now when he takes, I played this part wrong. When he takes, I should really just take back with the knight. And notice that taking with the knight is better than taking with the bishop. The knight on this square can always escape by taking the knight on c3. So I guess that means that it doesn't get subject to, it seems a bit of a target here on e4, but it looks like it always has a nice escape route. So good way to play it. Anyway, so my next move was a mistake. Let's see. After bishop to f5, instead of taking right away, he could have tried this move g4, which is kind of interesting, kicking the bishop. Bishop drops back, and then he could take the pawn here. No, I'd still take with the knight. Pushing on with g5 is interesting, trying to kick my knight around. g5, knight to d5. Looks like it's okay. He gets his pawn back, but he's kind of messed up his king side. That might be an interesting way to play. Still, you see, with an advantage to black. So nothing to be afraid of here. Anyway, he took, and as I said, I should just grab that pawn, but instead I dropped my bishop back to g6. I just played that too quickly, and we're out of the opening book here, and white has an advantage now. He got his pawn back, and he has more space in the center, so he's doing good here. He continues with e5, kicking my knight. I go to e4. Could have also gone to d5. Either of those squares are okay. Knight f3. And I'm not doing anything particularly wrong here. We just get normal developing moves for a while. Open up a line for my bishop. He goes bishop to d3, asking me what I want to do with my knight. And I decide now is a good time to take off this knight on c3 and rescue my knight from its somewhat awkward spot. So I think I'm in fine shape here. I developed my bishop to e7, preparing to castle. And I have ideas of undermining the center with the move c5, which I play later in the game. So if you look at this, I mean, white is definitely better. It has more space. But, well, it's not an opening disaster. It's just that I could have been better if I'd just taken that pawn on e4 when I had the chance. Anyway, I go c5, undermining. He goes king h1. Actually, this is a bit of a slow move, and now the game is about even. The engine is recommending keeping the pressure up with rook to b1. He gets in rook to b1 later in the game. Also, bishop takes. And, yeah, look at the evaluation. I mean, it's a opening advantage to white, but not a huge one. So I think that's about right. And after king h1, it's about even. I keep developing knight c6, rook b1 now, play b6. And now, after this, actually, he starts to get some interesting activity, starting with bishop b5, pinning my knight, and I have to defend it. And he pushes on with d5. This is an interesting sequence, opening up lines, bringing more pieces in. And in fact, the engine evaluation is starting to increase in white's favor. So he's found a good plan here. He's now putting more pressure on my knight and forcing my rook over to defend. But I'm able to hold on to everything. And he gets another piece on. So I think white's playing this part of the game very well, putting pressure on all my pieces, lining up his forces, and getting his pieces active. And it's what you want to do when you have these. He has long-term structural damage to his pawn, so he needs to compensate for that in terms of piece activity. I just castle here, which turns out to be the right move. There is a bunch of incipient threats, but they're worse when my king is in the center. So I take the opportunity here. I'm able to castle, and I want to get away from the threats here, and it looks like that was the right decision. Now he can. It also allows me to support my rook, bring another rook in to chase his queen away, things like that. He goes with bishop g3, dropping his bishop back. If he advances the pawn here, I can take his bishop, and he can win my knight, so it's a trade. But that turns out to be okay for me, I think. So bishop to g3, not bad. Although, what was the chess engine saying there? Rook b to e1. I'm bringing the rook to the e file is an interesting way of, putting some more impetus behind the e-pawn. Okay, but this, I think, is not bad either. Rook f to d8, chasing the queen. Queen goes here, setting up some threats along the light squares, which actually I wasn't completely aware of. First I kick the queen. Yeah, so I think that's a mistake. What's funny is this move queen d7 the chess engine is recommending is very counterintuitive. You're walking into a pin. Right? You're placing your queen where it's in this pin, which I just went to a lot of trouble to unpin that knight. It's strange to pin it again. And you're also putting the queen where it could potentially be chased by a rook. Although I guess if the rook goes here, you could actually take it. There are problems on the back rank, as well as winning 2 rooks for the queen. So he probably isn't doing that. And I guess I have ideas of coming out to maybe this square to unpin the knight, get my queen a little more active. So interesting move, queen d7. So knight a5 is not the best move here. He drops back. And now my queen is running out of squares. I can't go to d7 anymore because his bishop is controlling all these squares. And where else can the queen go? I can't go to this square. I could go to b7. In fact, that's what I do. Yeah, that's the recommended move. And he can play queen or bishop to a6 and win the exchange here. So it looks like after this knight a5, he's just winning the exchange by force. What's funny is after queen d5, he really should just take the knight. He throws in this move c4, which you wouldn't suspect is a bad move. I mean, it's a tempo on the queen. But this pawn, it turns out, can't be defended. So actually that move c4 just loses a pawn for no particular reason. After I retreat my queen, he grabs the exchange now. And then there's no way he can defend this pawn. So I'm getting a pawn for the exchange, and I have a bishop pair, and his structure is still messed up. So it turns out this is an even position. I have adequate compensation. So he goes he goes with the b rook to d1, putting it on an open file. I grab the pawn. He goes knight d2, chasing my knight away. And I could trade it off. It looks like that's okay, but I thought I wanted to keep the knight on the board and play for a kingside attack or activity. So take advantage of the pin on the pawn and route my knight to the kingside this way. He comes in with the queen, and this is a kind of a double attack. He unpins the pawn, so he's attacking my knight, and at the same time he's attacking on a7. And so I move the knight away, and he just grabbed the pawn. I think he didn't stop to consider my move, but this knight here actually is making threats. It's threatening to win back the exchange, which I do. I play knight e3 and win the exchange. What's funny is the chess engine likes a different move here, even better than knight e3, which is the second choice, winning the exchange. Knight takes g3. I really did not consider this at all during the game, because I was intent on getting my material back. But after this simple trade, I'm still down the exchange, but, well, he can't hold on to all his pawns. He's got, if we back up a second, this is kind of funny, he's got 3 isolated pawns and 1 pair of pawns that's both doubled and isolated. So this is one of the worst pawn structures that are possible. One of the worst possible pawn structures you can have. And I've got the bishop pair, so I have the pieces that can take advantage of all the lines, open lines that are created by the bad pawn structure. So this is all good for me. And on top of that, I can win a pawn immediately and start harassing his rooks. I can also get pressure on this d-pawn. So, interesting. Anyway, I didn't do that. I went ahead and grabbed the exchange. He played knight f3, and I take a rook off. And so we're in a position where the material's even, but, well, I have the bishop pair, which is a slight material advantage, and I have the better pawn structure. We both have 5 pawns, but he's got 3 isolated pawns, and I have my pawns nicely coordinated. My queen's defending the b-pawn. He could attack the b-pawn, actually. Let's see. I played rook to d8 here. So right here he could have brought his rook over to attack the b-pawn, and that probably would have been best play. He played h3, which gives me a chance to grab the c-pawn. I could have grabbed that on the previous move too. So a little bit of sloppy play on both sides, but basically black is still winning throughout this section. Brings his queen over to hold on to the d-pawn and try and keep my pawns from advancing by attacking him from behind, but this is not successful. I go bishop to e4, chasing his or harassing his knight a bit. He goes king to h2, and then I start pushing the pawns forward. I can play b5 now that there's nothing. I guess there never was anything guarding that square, so I just start the pawns rolling at this point. Goes knight h4. I'm not sure where that knight is going. It ends up, let's back up. Yeah, the knight ends up going back to f3 on the next move. So whatever he had planned here, it wasn't a working maneuver. And yeah, maybe he's trying to open up lines against the f-pawn, but I've got this pretty securely blocked here with my bishop on e7. Okay, I just keep pushing with c4. Just keep marching those pawns. He brings his rook over to e1. Cancel that. Rook to e1, hitting my bishop. Bishop goes to d3, anchoring itself on these pawns. Now the knight just drops back to f3. Yeah, I think he just had trouble finding a plan. I keep pushing my pawns forward. Goes queen a5. Still looking for a good spot for his queen. I push on with c3. And now queen to a7. Maybe a little bit of maneuvering to bring his queen back to try and defend. Rook to c8, getting the rook behind the passed pawn. knight to d4, hitting my queen. And now I spot this tactic that he's placed his knight and his queen on a diagonal, and I have a bishop of that color, and it's supported by the rook. So I throw in this double attack, this fork. And if he takes my queen, I take his queen. This is how it was played. And then he should retreat his knight back to g5 or f4, one of these two squares. And he could play on, but I have quite an advantage. I have an extra pawn. I have this really strong pass pawn, and I have the bishop pair. So you can see it's a -6 evaluation. He played something even worse. He played his knight back to d4, and I grabbed it. And he resigned at this point, not too soon, but that was definitely time to resign at that point. Interesting game, I thought. I think I played pretty well in this game. I only made a few mistakes, and I was able to take advantage of my opponent's mistakes, which is what it's all about. Just got a slightly worse position out of the opening, but it wasn't a fatal disadvantage. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Leave any comments you have in the section below, and I will see you again soon. Bye.